Saint Catherine of Siena. Saint Catherine of Siena was born in Siena, Italy, on the feast day of the Annunciation in 1347. She was the 25th of 26 children. Her father was a successful wool dyer, and when Catherine was just 6 years old and on the road to visit her sister, she had a vision of Christ seated in the glory with his apostles Peter, Paul, and John. A year later, at the age of 7, she had pledged her life to God. As she grew into her teen years, her mother began to pressure her about getting married. She dressed up to please her mother, but soon repented for the sin of vanity and stated she would never marry. When her family pressured her more, she cut off all of her long brown hair, which had been a symbol of her beauty. As punishment for not cooperating, her family made her do the inferior jobs of the house, and also never let her be alone, which she enjoyed the most. Her father realized punishment wasn't going to change Catherine's mind, and he finally gave her what she wanted, which was solitude. For the next couple of months, Catherine spent all of her time in a small cell which was isolated from the rest of the house. She ate very little and hardly spoke to anyone. She spent most of her time in prayer. She then became a Dominican tertiary, which is basically a nun, and for 3 years she only talked to her confessor and only left the house when she was going to church. During this time, Catherine would rarely have visions of God, but spent most of her time being tempted by the devil. She often thought God had abandoned her, but then she would hear a voice cry out to tell her that God was always in her heart. One day when Catherine was praying in her room, she had a vision of Christ with Mother Mary and the heavenly host. In her vision, Christ put a ring on her finger, which gave her the courage and faith to overcome temptation. To Catherine, the ring was always visible, but to others it was invisible. After this vision, Catherine finally had the courage to come out of her solitude and socialize with other people. She volunteered as a nurse for people who suffered with horrible diseases that nobody wanted to deal with. Catherine made many friends when she opened up to the world, and she called these people her spiritual family. She could read these people's thoughts and often knew their temptations. She wrote letters to her spiritual family in order to guide them in life and help them seek and find Christ. Saint Catherine and her circle of friends also helped relieve the people suffering from the plague that struck Siena. She made them comfortable, prepared them for death, and sometimes even buried them. Along with helping the sick, she also helped the condemned. She would visit the men in prison and try to convince them to repent and come to God. Catherine was also said to have worked a few miracles, and she could always help resolve a dispute. While visiting the city of Pisa later in her life, Catherine went to a church called St. Christina's and had been gazing at the crucifix, when suddenly 5 blood rays descended from it and pierced her hands, feet, and heart, causing so much pain that she fainted. The wounds remained as stigmata, which are marks corresponding to those left on Jesus' body by the crucifixion, and they were only visible to herself during her life, but then they became visible to everyone after her death. A couple of things that St. Catherine is most known for are aiding the Pope Gregory and Pope Urban, convincing Pope Gregory to move back to Rome, and writing the Dialogue of St. Catherine. She passed away from a stroke in 1380, and in 1461 she was canonized by Pope Pius II.